On the stroke of midnight, as June 25, 1975 dawned upon India, a sense of foreboding gripped the nation.
This marked a watershed moment in India's post-independence history, plunging the world's largest democracy into darkness. The emergency cast a long shadow, leaving an indelible mark on India's political landscape. The proclamation of emergency did not occur in a vacuum. It was the culmination of political and social upheavals brewing in India for some time. The nation held its breath, caught in the crosshairs of uncertainty and trepidation, as a new chapter unfolded in India's destiny.
The roots of the emergency can be traced back to the 1971 general election, where Indira Gandhi and her Congress party secured a thumping majority. However, this victory was soon marred by allegations of electoral malpractice. I filed a petition in the Allahabad High Court, accusing her of employing corrupt practices during the election campaign.
The High Court's verdict, delivered on June 12, 1975, sent shockwaves through the nation. The court upheld Narayan's petition, finding Gandhi guilty of electoral misconduct and nullifying her election victory. Instead of accepting the verdict and stepping down gracefully, Gandhi chose to dig in her heels. She appealed the High Court's decision to the Supreme Court, but simultaneously invoked Article 352 of the Constitution, declaring a state of internal emergency.
Article 352 of the Indian Constitution, a legacy of the colonial era, granted sweeping powers to the government to deal with emergencies. It allowed the central government to assume extraordinary powers, curtailing fundamental rights and suspending democratic processes in the name of safeguarding national security and maintaining public order.
The government's justification for invoking Article 352 was based on the premise that the country faced grave internal disturbances.
The High Court's verdict against Indira Gandhi had triggered widespread protests and demonstrations, which the government claimed were orchestrated by opposition parties to destabilize the nation.
Critics argued that the real motive behind emergency was to quell political opposition and consolidate the ruling party's grip on power. Section 4, a muffled nation censorship, arrests and the crushing of dissent. The declaration of emergency unleashed a period of unprecedented repression and curtailment of civil liberties in India.
Censorship was imposed on the press, with strict restrictions placed on reporting and publications deemed critical of the government. Journalists and editors faced intimidation, harassment, and arrest for defying censorship orders.
Thousands of political opponents, activists, journalists, and academics were arrested and detained without trial under the Draconian Maintenance of Internal Security Act, or MEISA. The suspension of fundamental rights meant that citizens had limited legal recourse against arbitrary arrests and detentions.
The emergency also saw the government assuming sweeping powers to control the bureaucracy, judiciary, and media. Constitutional amendments were rushed through Parliament, further concentrating power in the hands of the Prime Minister and her inner circle.
Section 5. Voices of defiance, opposition leaders, and the fight for democracy. Despite the atmosphere of fear and repression, voices of dissent refused to be silenced.
Jaya Prakash Narayan, a veteran Gandhian socialist leader, emerged as a rallying figure for the opposition, calling for a total revolution to restore democracy. Other prominent opposition figures, including Morarji Desai, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, and Lal Krishna Advani, were arrested and detained for their vocal criticism of the emergency.
The fight against emergency was not confined to the political sphere. Student groups, trade unions, civil society organizations, and ordinary citizens from all walks of life rose up to challenge the authoritarian regime. The emergency, despite its initial success in suppressing dissent, inadvertently sowed the seeds of a powerful pro-democracy movement that would ultimately lead to its downfall.
The political landscape of India was forever altered. The lessons learned during the emergency have continued to shape political discourse, policy making, and the collective consciousness of the nation. It served as a stark reminder of the fragility of democracy and the need for constant vigilance to protect it. Narrator. The emergency period, although a dark chapter in India's history, left an enduring impact on the nation's democratic fabric.
The legacy of the emergency continues to influence India's democratic journey, reminding us of the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring power of the people's will to uphold freedom and justice.